Hi friends, and welcome. On today's adventure, we're going to show you the second stop on our western swing. We spent our first week in the early fall out west actually fighting fires and hunting elk with the Sheltons. Well, now we're on our way home, but we have one more stop to make. We're headed up to Saratoga, Wyoming, and if you're a frequent flyer, you already know that usually we stop there for their early black powder season antelope hunt. Tina has actually drawn this difficult to get tag 2 years in a row. I should tell you though, this year was going to be different. I actually drew this tag, and even though she's wanting to get home awful bad, she's being really supportive. She actually told me that I could take the entire day if I needed it to get this done. Yeah, she's that kind of team player. Still, I wasn't feeling too pressured. We'd seen quite a few nice goats on the way up here, and even though this was a do-it-yourself, no outfitter, no guide, save myself kind of hunt, we were actually hunting public and private ground. I was thinking I could get my tag on a goat before I overstayed my welcome. Yeah, with just a little luck. Hey, I'm your host, Kyle Randall. This is my Wilderness Journal, and we're going out after black powder antelope right now. First light the next morning found us on the east side of that irrigated hayfield watching a couple of goats work their way out. We were only 4 or 5 minutes into legal shooting time, but so far we hadn't seen anything legal to shoot at. In fact, there were very few antelope out on the field and just a few more working their way in. I wasn't worried though. I'd scouted this place enough to know that by full sunup there'd be antelope all over this alfalfa. All we needed to do was get close enough to the right one. There's a couple down there by the cows. Bunch of geese too coming in. Sand hills, all sorts of stuff out here. After watching quite a few goats work their way out into the alfalfa from the far side, I told T we might as well sit down and just watch. We probably ought to sit here for a little bit. Not long after we sat down, we spotted a young buck out in the middle of the field. He looked like he was a younger, immature buck, something that in a couple of years would look really nice. Bunch of them over there. Along with the geese, there were a number of antelope starting to pile up on the far side of the field. That's where that guy from Arizona's hunting, on the other side there. We sat there watching the geese and the antelope pile up on the western edge of that alfalfa, and I was beginning to wonder how come he hadn't shot yet. There had to be a bunch of antelope within range of him. From where we sat, I could see at least 2 good bucks out on the alfalfa now, and what looked like a third still in the sagebrush. Sounds like he shot. I bet he got a goat. Yeah, there goes a bunch of them running. We definitely heard a shot, and then it started raining antelope. From every direction we saw antelope running off the field. There were definitely more antelope out here than even I had realized. It seemed like everywhere we looked we could see an antelope. There was even a young buck on the hill behind us and another out in the field in front of us. Unfortunately, they were both just a little too young. We sat there watching the last of the goats leave the field, and then I noticed the other guys all the way across out in the alfalfa. Picked up a bag and a rifle. The other guy's been looking down, so maybe there's a dead goat laying right there. I hope so. Yeah, I think they're dragging. They're walking right together like they're pulling, so he got his goat. Let's go over there and see what he got. Might as well. These all took off. Then we'll set up over on the other side. You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd actually talked to the other guys hunting this area the day before. He was a really nice guy named Martin Walker out of Arizona, and he and his hunting partner had set up the day before. So when we saw them out in the field that first morning, I was pretty certain he'd tagged out. So Tina and I got up and went over there to have a look. You know, that's the best goat in all of Wyoming. You know why?
Right now. It's got my tag on it.
That's right. It's your goat. That's I tell everybody.
It's got my tag on it. But
that's a nice goat.
So
Congratulations. That's awesome. Congratulations.
He was kind of pretty in the sun, but
oh yeah.
He kind of shrank a little bit when I walked up there.
We congratulated Martin on his great antelope, and then I found out that his partner wasn't even hunting. He was just there enjoying the trip with Martin, and that meant we had the entire place to ourselves for the rest of that day. So Tina and I decided to go back out, sit down at the north end of the field for a couple hours, see would some of those goats that ran out into the BLM land come back into the field. The only problem with this setup that I could see was when and if they did, they were going to pop through that fence and we wouldn't see them until then. That sort of meant they might surprise us, if you know what I mean. A bunch of geese over there. Some antelope moving up behind them cows. Way out on a far hillside, I could see a group of antelope out behind some cows, and I could see one lone goat working its way more or less in our direction down the field, and then straight in our direction. We sat there trying to be still as this doe worked closer and closer. She was definitely proving my point about hiding from wildlife. It's more about what's behind you than what's in front of you. As long as they can't see that human outline and you sit still, after walking right past us, once at less than 30 yards, she finally did notice us. Right place, wrong go. But even then, she didn't spook real bad, she just trotted off. And it wasn't long after she left and the entire field was empty save the geese. And then they left too. It was time to go to lunch. Despite all the geese and the sandhill cranes for entertainment, the antelope movement really wasn't much the rest of the morning. After a couple hours, in fact, Tina and I decided to go in and have some lunch. We'd come back a little later on when the sun was behind us. Hopefully the antelope would start moving back into the field and we'd get a chance. And Tina did remind me that we probably should get lunch to go. Yeah. And after being back in the field for a couple of hours, we did start to see a few antelope working their way back into the alfalfa. Several does and fawns were popping through the fence and working out into the field, so we kept an eye on the crossings we could see. And then I heard something behind us. I peeked through the fence. There was a number of antelope, including a couple of pretty nice bucks, out in the sage working parallel behind us.
That's definitely him.
They weren't that far out, 175, 200 yards, just a little too far for my black powder gun. There was also one antelope with a weird growth, a goiter or something on its neck.
Too far.
It'd be the farthest I ever shot anything with this gun.
Is that him?
Yeah, there's one there and one behind him. Both of them are shooters.
But it really didn't matter which one was out there. They were just a little too far to reach. They'd need to come in a little closer, either get up behind us or cross the fence and get into the field before I had any chance at them.
Sorry, they're not going very far.
That's I'm afraid of.
What?
By 4 o'clock that afternoon, we were seeing quite a few antelope up on their feet and working through the sagebrush out on the BLM land behind us. Unfortunately, at least for now, they seem content to stay out there just outside the reach of my black powder gun. Still, I wasn't real concerned. I figured sooner or later at least some of them had worked their way into that hayfield to get something to eat. The only real concerns I had were the noises. The crackling and the humming of the electric wires just over our head where we were sitting was a little discerning, and so was the occasional tick-tock I heard, followed by Tina pointing at her watch. Yeah. I remember thinking these antelope must be used to all that humming and crackling from the power wires. That's why it doesn't seem to bother them as they started coming through the fence and feeding out into the field. We watched as group after group popped under that fence and trotted out into the field. But so far, at least, no shooters. And then Tina noticed a buck down at the other end of the field. She pointed it out. This was definitely a buck, and he seemed to be having more than a little bit of trouble convincing himself to cross the fence, head out there where all those girls were. He could obviously see them, but he just didn't seem to want to cross into the field. And in the end, it really didn't matter. It'd be a couple of years before he'd be a shooter. It was already after 5 when I motioned to Tina that the buck she'd spotted was just a little too young. I was wanting something a little more mature, a little something older. She just kinda half smiled at me and then mouthed the words tick-tock again. I got it. And fortunately for me, it wasn't a couple of minutes later and there was a nice buck working some does right out in front of us. This buck had really long horns, but his body was kind of thin and he didn't have much mass. This was one of them bucks that's right on the line. He was pretty good right now. In a year or two, he might be a super goat. Friends, it was decision time in Wyoming. I definitely didn't want that little guy over there alongside the fence. And there were definitely more and more antelope piling up behind us and crossing up into the field. I knew Tina wanted to go home. I knew she really wanted to get this done today, so yeah, I passed. I just wanted to see a few more. I really wanted to see what else might show up. I sat there and watched those antelope run away, and then I heard a bunch more coming right behind us. I whispered to Tina,
Hear 'em. That's right behind us. Cross.
we could hear them right behind us coming at the fence, and then Tina pointed in the other direction. I looked, and that, friends, is what we were looking for.
Got him.
That one, we nailed that one. Wow, watch him. He's done, right? He ain't going nowhere. Awesome, right here, girl. Nice, all right. Hey, I don't do high fives to pretty girls. I get kisses. You're usually the antelope getter, but this time it fell to me because almost amazingly somebody didn't draw. Well, thanks for letting us lesser mortals have a chance. That's a nice goat right there.
Yeah.
Heavy, big high cutters. You're right. This thing will shoot an antelope. I was worried about how far we're going to shoot. What's that, about 40 yards? He trotted right up there. He was just easing along, following them does. No problem. Nice. Boy, I tell you what, hiding out here, public land antelope hunting. We're just onto some private land. We got permission from Robert and Cindy to come over here and set on their alfalfa field. The BLM is literally behind the fence. Yeah, he's not going there. And we had to sit it out this morning. There was a couple of guys in here hunting on Robert's property too. We saw they got a nice goat, fella from Arizona, and we got a chance to see that. And then this evening we come over and set up, and antelope time. One day, one goat with a black powder gun. I'm here to tell you, if you've never tried this, hunting the West, you know, last week we were hunting elk and we wound up fighting forest fires, and this week we come to hunt antelope and they're everywhere. You just never know, do you?
No.
It's awesome. Thank you, dear.
You're
I know
welcome.
this is tough, sitting in the dirt, crawling around like bugs. It is hard on old people. And I'm an old people. She's not yet, but I am. And we made her pay. We closed the deal right there. That's awesome. That is just awesome. You want to go see an antelope?
Sure.
Let's go. With a little more than an hour to spare, we'd taken what looked like a really nice antelope, and I don't mind telling you, I was a little relieved. As I got up there and walked out, I might even said tick-tock once or twice, well, under my breath. He's all done. Let me set this down. The black powder gun. But either way, look at that goat, girl. Look at that thing. Big old dude, got a bunch of extra stuff. He got a busted off cutter, big gnarly end. This oh boy. That, for a do-it-yourself hunt, that thing is beautiful. Big, nice, black, dark patches. I tell you, this is an exciting way to hunt. This is a great hunt, and you can do it yourself out here. On all these goats come off public land. We were fortunate to get Robert and Cindy to let us sit up here in their fence row, basically. But this is all public land stuff out here in Wyoming. You draw a tag, you can come do this. And I tell you, look at that. That is something. That's a dandy goat. Good. Not as good as yours. But then whose are? I'll take him. That is sniping goats with a black powder gun right there. Welcome to wonderful Wyoming. I need to get a tag on him. We need to get him cleaned out. Take him home. Kai loves that stuff. That's her thing. There, he is ours, all legal. And that is a beautiful, beautiful antelope. Look at that thing. I tell you what, they are one of the prettiest critters. You know what? And I truly want to thank Robert and Cindy, certainly you, darling, for coming out, helping me get one. It's this black powder season thing for antelope in Wyoming is an all right deal. We've hit 3 for 3, haven't we?
Yep.
I'll tell you. And this is a beautiful old buck. He's got some gnarly fun stuff going on his horns. He's kind of bent and twisted, a little bit like me. He's a little bit gnarly, a little bent, but he is definitely running that bunch, and we were fortunate enough to get close enough to sneak a shot in on him as he walked across there. It is quite a deal. I truly thank the Lord. This is an amazing critter. And I thank the people of Wyoming too, because this is a pretty amazing place. You want to go get the truck, or you want field dress?
I'll get the truck.
Yeah. I don't blame you. What a beautiful goat. Beautiful old dude too. That, my friends, was a gorgeous mature antelope buck. Cutters well above his ears, lots of extra character, lumps and bumps, and his body was a good deal bigger than the average antelope from southern Wyoming, something that would make the Randall family freezer happy, I assure you. And I have to tell you, Tina really didn't give me any static on this hunt. She's been at this plenty long enough to know that you can't put time constraints on wild critters. Most of them don't even own a watch. Hey, I want to thank too Robert and Cindy for letting us hunt there. Certainly Martin and his partner there for sharing that camp with us. We really enjoyed our time out in Wyoming, and if you're looking for something on a do-it-yourself level, you can still hunt antelope in Wyoming, and they're, in my opinion, one of the prettiest and toughest hunts. You can get it done by yourself just like we have, and I truly hope you go out there and give it a try. Hey, and if you do, well, you know, we might be out there sneaking down a fence road doing a stalk or setting up on a hayfield, and if we do run into you out there, well, you can rest assured we're going to stop and share that cup and a fire, maybe an antelope story or two, and if I don't see you out there, friends, well, then I'll be right back here so we can share another adventure from my wilderness journal.